We almost stopped the recording when the room went quiet. Not the respectful kind, the kind that settles after a decision has already been made. Some stories announce themselves loudly. This one arrived by being named. Nora Fielding was sitting in her grandmother's library when it happened, surrounded by people who had known her entire life and still chose the simplest explanation. This is how she remembers it. I knew something was wrong the moment Sloane stood up before the attorney finished clearing his throat. She didn't rush. She smoothed her skirt, looked around the room like she was checking for agreement, then fixed her eyes on me. "We should address the real issue first," she said, "before any numbers." My father leaned back in his chair. He didn't look at me. He didn't look surprised either. Sloane continued, calm, precise. Edith trusted Nora with access. And now items are missing. Claire pressed a hand to her mouth. "Sloane, this is not the time. It's exactly the time." My brother Aaron stared at the carpet like it might open up and save him. I felt my face warm. "What are you talking about?" Sloane tilted her head. "You know what I'm talking about. The watches, the papers, the things that don't just walk away." I waited for my father to intervene, for him to say my name the way he used to when I was small and scared. Instead, he said, "Let her finish." That was the moment I understood. This wasn't confusion. This was choreography. Jonathan Mercer adjusted the folder in front of him. "Mrs. Parker, I'd like to remind everyone that she's a thief," Sloane said, not loud, not angry, just decided. The word sat there, heavy and clean, like it had been polished before being handed to me. From where we were watching, it felt less like an accusation and more like a transfer of weight. I pushed my hands under my thighs to keep them still. "You're wrong," I said, "and you know it." My father finally looked at me then. "Nora," he said, "careful. This is about protecting the estate." I protected Edith. I said, "Every week." He didn't answer. Jonathan cleared his throat again. "Perhaps we should proceed with the will." Sloane smiled. "After this is resolved," I took a breath I didn't trust. "Then resolve it." No one moved. "If you are still listening, stay with her a little longer." Some silences matter. No one reached for a glass of water. No one shifted their chair. Even the fire sounded careful. Jonathan closed his folder halfway, then stopped. "Before we continue, I need to remind everyone that Mrs. Fielding asked for this process to be orderly." My father folded his hands. "Orderly requires clarity." Sloane nodded, satisfied, like he'd handed her the next line. "Exactly. We can't pretend nothing happened." Aaron's foot bounced once, then stilled. He didn't look up. I tried to slow my breathing. The room felt smaller, like the shelves had leaned in. "If you're accusing me of something, say it clean." Sloane didn't raise her voice. "I already did." Claire whispered my name, soft and thin. "Nora. Maybe you should explain." Explain meant defend. Defend meant lose ground. Jonathan straightened a page. "There will be time for statements. Mrs. Fielding was clear, Edith was trusting." My father cut in. Too trusting at the end. That landed harder than Sloane's word had. We noticed how quickly the room accepted that version of her. I kept my eyes on the table. The grain ran straight, familiar. She wasn't confused. My father exhaled through his nose. No one said confused. Silence again. Thicker now. I realized then that they weren't waiting for answers. They were waiting for compliance. While Jonathan shuffled papers, my mind drifted to the last Sunday I'd spent with Edith. She'd been in the kitchen, sleeves rolled, arguing with a stubborn jar. "Don't you dare laugh," she warned when I reached for it. I twisted the lid and it popped. She smiled anyway. "Good. Still works." That was how it always went. Small things, mail stacked too high, a printer refusing to cooperate, pills that needed sorting because the labels were too close together. I came every week, Not announced, not expected. I showed up, back in the library. My father cleared his throat. You were here often. Yes. I answered, because she asked me to be. Sloane leaned forward. Or because you wanted to be. Edith used to watch the driveway when I arrived. You're early, she'd say, every time, even when I wasn't. Then she'd ask about my job, my sleep, whether I was eating enough. Not once did she ask for a favor in return. Claire's voice broke through my thoughts. Nora helped with emails. Right, reading them. I said. She typed her own replies. My father's mouth tightened. She relied on you. She trusted me. We noticed how trust and reliance were treated like the same thing in that room. Jonathan looked up. Mrs. Fielding documented all access. Sloane smiled thinly. Of course she did. Edith's voice echoed in my head, calm and certain. Don't explain. Let them show themselves. I folded my hands and waited. Jonathan took a breath that sounded practiced. We'll proceed. He read slowly, like pace could soften impact. My father straightened as his name came first. $350,000, plus restricted shares held in trust. My father nodded once, polite. Not pleased, not offended, just measuring. Claire's turn followed. Temporary use of the Jackson Hole property. 5 years. She let out a small sound, relief wrapped in restraint. That's generous. She offered to the room. Aaron shifted when Jonathan reached him. $50,000, conditional upon steady employment. Aaron's shoulders dipped. That's fair, he murmured, though his eyes stayed on the floor. Sloane leaned back, already smiling. Her name landed last in the first round. $25,000 and one heirloom from the study. The smile slid off her face. That's it. Jonathan didn't look up. That is correct. Sloane laughed, quick and sharp. You're joking. My father's fingers tapped the armrest. Let's continue. Jonathan paused. The room seemed to lean toward him. Before the remainder is addressed, there are conditions. Sloane cut in. Conditions for her, she said, chin lifting toward me. That should come first. We felt how the room tilted again, not toward the money, but toward the story they wanted next. Jonathan closed the folder halfway. The remainder will be addressed after clarity. My throat tightened. I kept my eyes on the table and waited for the weight to fall. Sloane stood again, like sitting had become impossible. We're circling, she said. Let's be direct. Jonathan's pen hovered. Proceed carefully. She didn't. Items went missing over months. Watches, documents, things with value. And Nora was the only one here consistently. My father nodded, slow. Access matters. I felt heat climb my neck. You're implying he lifted a hand. No one's implying. We're asking for clarity. That word again. Clean, harmless, heavy. Sloane leaned closer. There was also a visit. Upper East Side. Appraisal office. Someone saw you there. I swallowed. Edith was with me. Silence. Thick enough to hear the fire shift. Aaron finally looked up. Nora, did she ever tell you that you could take anything I turned toward him? No. And you know that. He flinched. I'm just trying to understand. Claire folded her hands. If there's a misunderstanding, this is the moment to correct it. Correct meant confess. Confess meant make it easy. My father's voice softened, which scared me more. Nora, did you remove anything from the house? The room leaned in. Even Jonathan watched me now. We noticed how the question landed already answered. I stared at my father. I helped her manage her life. That's all. Sloane smiled, quick and bright. That's not a no. It is. I said, you're just not hearing it. My father exhaled. This affects the estate. I know. I replied, that's why you're doing this. No one spoke after that, not because there was nothing left to say, but because the line had been crossed and everyone felt it. My father shifted in his chair, the leather creaking. "Until this is sorted," he said. "It might help if Nora steps out." The words were careful. The meaning wasn't. Jonathan glanced up. "That isn't necessary. It's practical." My father replied, "We need space to think." Space meant without me. Claire reached for her bracelet, twisted it once. "Nora, maybe take a moment." Aaron opened his mouth, then closed it. His knee bounced, stopped. I stayed where I was. My hands rested flat on my thighs. "If I leave," I said, "you'll decide everything without me." Sloane shrugged. "We're deciding anyway." That landed low and dull. Like a bruise you don't notice until later. Jonathan cleared his throat again. "Mrs. Fielding asked that all beneficiaries remain present." My father didn't look at him. "Edith isn't here." I felt my chest tighten. I kept my voice even. "She asked me not to explain, not to argue." Sloane smiled like she'd been waiting for that. Convenient. We noticed how silence started to read as guilt once the room agreed it should. I leaned back. Small movement, deliberate. "I'm staying." No one argued. They didn't have to. The weight pressed harder when I didn't move. If this is hitting close, stay with it. Some moments only show their shape if you don't look away. I stared at the edge of the table and waited for whatever came next. Jonathan set his pen down. Edith anticipated this. My father's jaw tightened. Anticipated accusations. Anticipated behavior. Jonathan replied. He slid a thin folder from beneath the stack. Not dramatic, just there. She instructed me to proceed if the conversation moved in this direction. Sloane crossed her arms. "So now we're pretending this was all planned." Jonathan didn't look at her. He opened the folder and turned it toward the table. Estate cameras, limited angles, entry logs only. My father leaned forward. "Those cameras were installed for security." "Yes," Jonathan said. "They record entry points and restricted corridors. Nothing more." He tapped a page. Dates, times. Sloane's name appeared more than once. "That doesn't prove anything." Sloane said quickly. "I visited, late," Jonathan said, "and alone." I felt the room shift, not explode. "Shift," Jonathan continued. "Independent appraisal records. Manhattan, filed by an assistant listed under Ms. Parker." Sloane's mouth opened, then closed. "That's a coincidence." My father's voice stayed calm. "Paper trails can be misread." Jonathan nodded, which is why Mrs. Fielding insisted on corroboration. He pressed a button on his phone. A short audio clip played. My father's voice, clipped, unfinished. "Redirect suspicion before it hardens." The sound stopped. Silence rushed in. We noticed how even partial truth changed the temperature. My father stood. "That recording lacks context." "It does." Jonathan agreed, which is why it isn't standing alone. I stared at my hands, still tucked under my thighs. Edith's voice echoed, steady. "Let the structure speak." Sloane's breath went shallow. "This is a setup." Jonathan closed the folder. "No. It's documentation. No one reached for me. No one accused me now." The weight didn't lift. It moved. Jonathan turned the laptop toward the room. "Mrs. Fielding asked that this be shown if necessary." The screen flickered, then steadied. Edith sat in her favorite chair, hands folded, posture straight. Same pearl studs, same calm mouth. "If you're watching this," she began. Then someone tried to make Nora carry the cost of their choices. My father's shoulders stiffened. Sloane looked down at her nails. Edith continued. Voice even. "I kept records because trust deserves protection. Greed doesn't announce itself. Fear dresses as reason. Cowardice borrows other people's voices." She paused. Nora showed up. Quietly, consistently. She didn't ask me for money. She asked if I'd eaten. I felt my throat tighten. I didn't move. The will includes a morality clause, Edith said. Anyone who steals from me, conspires to do so, or attempts to frame another beneficiary forfeits their share. Sloane shook her head. This is manipulation. Jonathan didn't respond. He let Edith finish. I'm not punishing my family, Edith said. I'm limiting damage. The video went dark. We noticed how the room waited, like it hoped someone else would speak first. The door opened. A woman stepped in, plain clothes, hair pulled back. Detective Olivia Hart, she said. I'm here to preserve evidence and prevent interference. My father stood. This is unnecessary. Not anymore. She replied, calm. Please remain seated. Jonathan slid a document toward me. Control of the estate transfers as outlined. Legal team included. Sloane whispered my name. I didn't look. I kept my eyes on the closed laptop, on the reflection of a woman who had planned for this moment and trusted me not to break. The house didn't feel like a trophy once everyone left. It felt like a place that had finally stopped holding its breath. I didn't move in. I kept my apartment. I came by during the day, when the light was honest. The library turned into a workspace. Quiet desks, people asking for help without lowering their voices. Aaron came once. He stood in the doorway too long. I should have spoken up. Show up again. I told him. That's how it counts. My father sent a message through his attorney. Formal, distant. I didn't answer. Some conversations end without closure. That turned out to be fine. I visited Edith's grave on a cold afternoon. I brought nothing. No flowers, just time. I stood there and felt steady, which surprised me. What changed wasn't the money or the house. It was the weight. It moved off my shoulders and stayed gone. Nora Fielding learned that day she didn't need to explain herself to keep her life intact. She needed structure, boundaries, and the courage to stay when leaving would have been easier. I walked back to my car without looking behind me. We stayed quiet after she finished. If this settled somewhere in you, you know where our stories live.